can you believe it? This woman just sprayed my 12-year-old brother with a garden hose while screaming racial slurs at him. I watched in horror from the window as Mason collapsed to the ground, soaking wet and terrified, his friends scattering like frightened birds. The sound of his startled cry will haunt me forever, but not as much as the smirk on Sylvia Bradwell's face as she stood over my brother and said, "Asian kids like you were too loud. Go back to your country if you want to make noise." Her voice dripped with contempt, her perfectly manicured finger pointing down at Mason's drenched form like she was indicating a piece of trash rather than a human being. What Sylvia didn't know was who she was messing with. Not just who Mason was related to, but who would be coming for her in exactly 15 minutes. Have you ever wondered what happens when you push the wrong person too far? I should probably back up and introduce myself. I'm Nathaniel Tran. On paper, I'm just a government consultant who recently came home to visit my family during a rare break from work. That's what most of my neighbors at Maple Hollow Estates think. The exclusive gated community in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. is just a short drive from CIA headquarters in Langley, which makes it convenient for those in my profession. My parents moved here 5 years ago, seeking a better environment for Mason after I'd already left for college and eventually my career. My father's modest 3-bedroom colonial with a well-kept lawn looks like all the others on the street. Nothing too flashy. We prefer to blend in. That's second nature in my line of work. The neighbors see my father tending to his garden on weekends, my mother organizing community picnics, and Mason riding his bike with friends. Normal stuff, boring stuff. They don't see the 10 years I've spent in counterintelligence operations across 3 continents, or the fact that I speak 7 languages fluently, or that the business trips I mention when people ask about my job coincide with certain international incidents that briefly make the news before being quietly resolved. Mason is the kindest soul you'll ever meet. 12 years old and bright as the sun. He plays the violin, excels at math, and has a talent for making friends wherever he goes. My parents sacrificed everything to give him opportunities they never had when they immigrated from Vietnam in the 1980s. When they found a house in Maple Hollow Estates, it seemed perfect. Good schools, safe streets, a diverse community where Mason could thrive. My mother sent me pictures every week. Mason's science fair project, his basketball games, his smiling face in front of their new home. What wasn't perfect was Sylvia Bradwell, the HOA president of Maple Hollow Estates. From the moment my parents' moving truck pulled up, Sylvia watched from her bay window across the street, opera glasses occasionally catching the sunlight as she monitored every box and piece of furniture that entered the house. Sylvia was in her late 50s with platinum blonde hair cut in an expensive angular bob that looked like it could slice bread. She always wore pastel-colored blazers even in the D.C. summer heat and carried a leather portfolio everywhere she went, meticulously documenting every perceived violation in our community. Her thin lips seemed permanently pursed in disapproval, especially when she looked at families like ours. Her cat-eye glasses perched on her nose like predatory birds, and she used their sharp edges to point at infractions whenever she confronted someone. The trouble started just 2 weeks after my parents moved in. They had hung small paper lanterns on their porch, a nod to heritage and a way to make their new house feel like home. I thought they looked charming, the soft glow at night complementing the red geraniums my mother had planted in window boxes. Sylvia did not. My father was helping my mother install a new dishwasher when the doorbell rang with 3 sharp authoritative jabs. My mother opened the door to find Sylvia standing there, spine straight as a ruler, that leather portfolio clutched against her chest like armor. "Excuse me," Sylvia said, her gaze sliding past my mother to inspect the entryway, clearly looking for more violations. "We have strict regulations about exterior decorations. All lighting fixtures must be approved by the HOA Architectural Committee." My mother, always polite, nodded. "I'm sorry, I didn't know. Is there a form I need to fill out?" Her accent, though slight after 30 years in America, seemed to thicken under Sylvia's imperious stare. "Standard lighting packages are acceptable," Sylvia said, ignoring the question. Her eyes narrowed at the paper lanterns, and she made a note in her portfolio with a pen that probably cost more than all the lanterns combined. "Those will need to come down immediately. They violate our aesthetic standards." "But they are just small lights," my mother explained, a note of pleading entering her voice. "For celebrating our heritage." "I don't need your life story," Sylvia cut her off. The words were like a slap. "The rules are the rules. I'll be back tomorrow to ensure compliance. She turned to leave, then paused, looking back with a thin smile that didn't reach her eyes. Welcome to Maple Hollow Estates. We take pride in our community standards. When my parents told me about this during our weekly video call, I could see the hurt in my mother's eyes, though she tried to hide it. My father, ever the diplomat, suggested they simply follow the rules to avoid trouble. Always the peacemakers, my parents. That was just the beginning. Over the next few months, Sylvia found something wrong with my parents' house every week. Their mailbox was the wrong shade of black. The garden hose wasn't properly stored. The potted plants on their porch were non-approved vegetation. Each infraction came with a notice, a fine, and Sylvia's thinly veiled contempt. She's targeting us, my mother confided during one of our calls, lowering her voice though she was alone in the house. The Virginia evening was warm behind her. Fireflies beginning to blink in the carefully manicured landscaping visible through the window. Mrs. Hartman across the street has gnomes and flamingos, but somehow we're the problem. I'd seen it during my visits home. Sylvia seemed to patrol past our house multiple times a day, camera in hand, looking for violations. It was harassment, plain and simple. But my parents, worried about fitting in and making a good impression in their new community, paid the fines and made the changes Sylvia demanded. Just ignore her, I advised, though my instincts were screaming something very different. In my world, threats are neutralized, not ignored. She's probably like this with all the new residents. My mother shook her head, her eyes troubled. No, I've talked to other neighbors. Mrs. Chun next door said Sylvia has never once cited her for anything. And the bakers down the street have a basketball hoop that's against the rules, but she doesn't say anything about that. I wanted to confront Sylvia then and there, but my parents made me promise to let them handle it. We don't want to cause trouble, Nate, my father said. We want Mason to be happy here. So I backed off, respecting their wishes. That was my first mistake. Then came yesterday. I was home on my first leave in 8 months, trying to decompress from a particularly tense operation in Eastern Europe. Mason was outside playing basketball with 3 friends in our driveway. It was 4 p.m. Well within the community's noise ordinance hours, which permitted recreational activities until 8 p.m. The sound of the ball bouncing and the boys' laughter floated through the open window. A normal, wholesome sound that should make any community proud. That peace was shattered when Sylvia Bradwell appeared around the corner, portfolio clutched to her chest like a shield, cat-eye glasses glinting in the sunlight. She stopped directly at the edge of our driveway, her body language aggressive, territorial. I couldn't hear what was being said through my closed window, but I saw Sylvia gesturing animatedly, pointing at her watch, then at her ears. Mason, ever polite like her parents, stopped playing and approached her with the ball tucked under his arm. His friends stood awkwardly in the background, exchanging glances. Something in my gut told me this wasn't right. I grabbed my phone and headed for the door, moving with the urgent calm that's become second nature after years of operations where seconds mean the difference between life and death. By the time I got outside, Sylvia had backed Mason against our basketball hoop, jabbing her finger toward his face. Violation of Section 8, Paragraph 5, Sylvia was saying, her voice carrying across the driveway. No excessive noise during weekday hours. But the rules say we can play until 8 o'clock, Mason replied, showing her the community app on his phone where the rules were listed. See right here? That doesn't apply when the noise is disturbing other residents, Sylvia snapped, swatting his phone away. Then she walked back to her yard, grabbed the garden hose that was already running, and deliberately aimed it at Mason and his friends. The spray was powerful and direct, calculated, cruel, the kind of deliberate act that reveals a person's true character. Mason and his friends were soaked immediately, their phones, shoes, and clothes drenched in seconds. The basketball bounced away, forgotten. Their shocked cries turned to panic as they tried to protect their electronics from the water. I sprinted the remaining distance as Sylvia continued spraying. That satisfied smirk plastered across her face. Asian kids are too loud, she was saying, her voice low. Go back to your country if you want to make noise like that. Tom slowed down for me. I noticed everything. The thin stream of water arcing through the air. The way Mason's hands trembled. The tears mixing with water on his cheeks. The flash of cruel satisfaction in Sylvia's eyes before she masked it with manufactured concern as she became aware of my approach. What the hell do you think you're doing? I shouted, my voice carrying the authority that makes junior agents stand at attention. Sylvia faltered for just a moment, the hose lowering slightly. Your brother and his friends were creating a disturbance, she said coolly. And they refused to comply with my instructions to quiet down. Their kids playing basketball at 4 p.m. The HOA rules explicitly allow recreational activities until 8 o'clock. The noise was excessive, Sylvia insisted, finally turning off the hose but keeping it in her hand like a weapon. And I have authority as HOA president to enforce the noise ordinances as needed. No, you don't, I said. And now you're going to learn what happens when you assault my family.